Hello everybody, welcome back to the video, and today I am going to be ranking the Doctor Who Regeneration stories. Few criteria: the story must feature the Doctor's regeneration as one of, if not the last scene of the story. That means I'm not going to be including Time of the Doctor or the TV movie. This also means other regenerations for Time Lords won't be included, so I'm not going to be featuring Utopia, for instance, which features the regeneration of the Master. Alright, let's get into this. Number 12, The Night of the Doctor. I mean, it's really good, right? But it's only 8 minutes. I mean, compared to these other ones, of course it's not going to be higher than last. In fact, the only reason I put it on here was so that McGann showed up in more than 2 videos, because, I mean, if he had more than, 2 main appearances and a cameo, I think he would be a strong contender for maybe the best Doctor. He's a strong contender if he had more. I've listened to some of his audios, and they're really good. I would really recommend Time of the Daleks, I think it is. That's a very good story. Anyway, yeah, really good short, but feels more of a setup for the War Doctor and Day of the Doctor specifically. Maybe 8's regeneration should have been what season 7's finale was, and then they could have cut one of the earlier episodes, The Name of the Doctor, slightly twist the ending, and then have 8's regeneration be the finale. I think that would have been really cool. Either way, yeah, that's it for The Night of the Doctor. So, funnily enough, at number 11 is the 11th Doctor's regeneration story, The Time of the Doctor. This really should have been full-on Trenzalore. That would have been really cool, but instead you get a lot of time with Clara, which, I mean, maybe it's supposed to be that you're seeing all of this through her perspective. I don't know. I love the idea that the 11th Doctor, the Doctor played by the youngest ever actor to play the Doctor, dies of old age. That is a great idea. And Moffat gave a great last 10-15 minutes. The clock tower sequence in 11's regeneration are some of the best things he has ever written. This should have been a 2-parter. Alright, if this had been a 2-parter, it would have been much higher. I think it would have been much better. And ultimately, I feel like it would have given Smith the time he deserved to have a great exit. Or maybe just have the whole thing be Trenzalore and have Clara show up every here and there. I mean, I don't know. Either way, yeah, that's it for The Time of the Doctor. Number 10 is Logopolis. This story has some interesting points. Should have been a 3-parter, right? You cut out one episode. I think that this would be much more intense, much more high stakes. You get that sense that time is running out, but also not really. If this had been a 3-parter, then maybe that sense of dread would have come across more. But what I find interesting is that this actually is a post-regeneration story, because this is the first appearance of Ainley as the Master. He had showed up in a previous story where his character gets possessed by the Master, but this is his first time playing the character. And so it essentially acts as a post-regeneration story for Ainley and a regeneration story for Baker. I like that. It's a nice thing. A pretty underrated aspect of this one. Ultimately, the actual sequence in which Baker regenerates is fantastic. The only issue is his reason for regeneration. So, I mean, really, his successors of his fall from greater heights than he did. 13, okay, yeah, post-regeneration. The Doctor has extra strength afterwards. That was established actually at the beginning of 4's era. So you know what? I'm fine with that. But 10, there's no excuse for him being able to survive that great a height. I don't know, maybe they get stronger bones or something as the regenerations progress. I don't know. Either way, yeah, pretty good, but 4 should have gone out on a classic, considering he has stuff like the Deadly Assassin, the Talons of Wang Chiang, Pyramids of Mars, Shada, okay, yeah, Genesis of the Daleks. These are probably some of the most iconic Doctor Who stories of all time, and he gets this? I don't know. I mean, Baker himself probably said it best. Probably should have left a season earlier. So yeah, that's it for Logopolis. Number 9 is Twice Upon a Time. Again, Moffat does a really good job with that last 10 to 15 minutes, and ultimately, that's the best part of the episode. Unfortunately, this episode does introduce a big plot hole into the show's universe, which is a machine that can bring back a copy of anyone based on just their memories. Seriously, this opens up all sorts of plot holes. Someone dies. Why hasn't the Doctor found out about these people before? Why hasn't he used them to bring back dead companions before? And speaking of dead companions, oh boy, oh boy. They introduced this device to bring back one of the worst companions in the show. Why bring back Bill when this offer's being made to the First Doctor? Return this World War I era military captain, and he can get someone back. Now, if they don't know it's the First Doctor, I think River actually would have made a lot more sense. That could have actually been a really fun interaction. The First Doctor and River would have actually been really funny. I don't even think Big Finish has covered that. I want to see some of I think the Third Doctor actually got an audio adventure. So, I mean, I want to see these 60s Doctors interact with her. That could be fun. But, I mean, the offers being made to the First Doctor, if there was any point they could have brought back Susan, I think this would have been the perfect opportunity. Because then that would have also been a good reason for 12 as well. They both would have been like, yeah, okay, that might have made it the offer more tempting. And I love Capaldi's delivery of the line. So there's not an evil plan. I don't know what to do when there's not an evil plan, because it means there's no reason for him to be holding back the regeneration. And so I like that scene as well. The regeneration itself is one of the best ones in the show's history. Honestly, maybe top 5. But 12 really should have regenerated at the end of The Doctor Falls. And that's a better story than this one, but it still wouldn't have ranked that much higher. Probably would have been it would have been number 8 instead, probably. Because the reason 12 regenerates is kind of stupid, which is he does not pay attention to his surroundings, and a Cyberman sneaks up on him and electrocutes him, and that's what triggers the regeneration. That kind of irritates me. If the actual reason had been when he's standing off against all those Cybermen at the end of The Doctor Falls, then you know what? There you go. That would have been a great scene. But, one, that's not the actual regeneration story, and 2, that's not how it happened. So, yeah, overall, really good ending, but, yeah, that's all I have to say about Twice Upon a Time. Number 8 is The End of Time. So we go from the most chill regeneration story to the one that was trying to be made into the most epic. This was the regeneration story for David Tennant, and it's So a lot of people say that Time of the Doctor is the sort of throw everything into the kitchen sink and let's see what we get. This one throws everything in the kitchen sink. You get voodoo being used to resurrect the Master, the return of Gallifrey, the Time War, the Master planting his consciousness into every person on the planet. Oh yeah, and Timothy Dalton as Rassilon. Yes, James Bond is the villain of this. And you know what? Quick side note. Timothy Dalton as Rassilon is the best one-time villain in the show's history. Yeah, and actually I would say the highlight of the entire story. And I need to do a video on the roles I've seen him in, because it's actually more villain roles than hero roles. But yeah, let's not. So there, you might notice there's one thing I have not said while talking about this, and that's actually the departing Doctor himself, David Tennant. Oh boy, this episode is Ten's ego problems cranked up to 11. Particularly his regeneration scene, which is, for some reason, said as being one of the greatest, where he says, "I don't want to go." I think that's way over dramatic. I like the idea that he goes and says goodbye to all of his companions, right? But you don't need to have him say, "I don't want to go," as his last words. So I actually hope that his upcoming second turn as the Doctor will actually rectify this and give Tennant an actual good, regeneration scene. Because so far, the only time he's been good in regenerations was his appearance at the end of Parting of the Ways and his appearance at the end of The Power of the Doctor. Both of which in the incarnation which he was the one regenerated into, not the one that was regenerating. Yeah, also, John Simmons the Master is a really fun villain of this one. You know what? Maybe one of the ones I'll do in the build-up is a ranking of the Masters, because that's going to be fun. Either way, yeah, let's move on to the next one. So number 7 is the 10th planet. Alright, so there's a lot to like about the 10th planet. 1, when William Hartnell's on screen, he is fantastic. 2, not the best Cyberman story, but a strong contender, and their creepiest appearance, and probably my favorite design for the villains. Because this fits with the original vision the most. Right? They're people that were dying, and so they use cybernetics to keep themselves running. And the voice and just the design in general is creepy. And there's actually points where you can actually see the person underneath the costume that's wearing it. And that just adds to the creepy factor, because you can actually see their eyes. And so that actually really kind of makes them creepy. Hartnell does not appear a lot in episode 3. Health issues caused that. But episode 4, he's really good. And of course, this has maybe the most famous sequence of Hartnell's era that does not involve the Daleks or Susan, which is, when he is describing the fact that the Cybermen have no emotions. No. Okay, it might sound like a simple description, but he's sort of admitting that he's kind of learned about those from his first appearance, in which he was going to beat a caveman to death with a rock. So, yeah. Also, this is the second adventure for Ben and Polly, and something that really doesn't get mentioned a lot about them is they're the first humans in the Doctor Who universe to actually see a regeneration go down. And yeah, of course they freak out next episode, but they're the audience surrogate. So yeah, that's really all I have to say about the 10th planet. It was the first. There have been better ones, but also this is a good send-off. A good first attempt. Number 6 is the power of the Doctor. So, is this one trying to do too much? Let's see, you have the Daleks drilling into volcanoes, Cybermen attacking unit, the Master triggering the Doctor into a forced regeneration to regenerate into the Master, the returns of Ace and Tegan, cameos by David Bradley, Peter Davison, Colin Baker, Sylvester McCoy, and Paul McGann. And they actually have to write off Jodie Whittaker as well. Yeah, I'd say this one has a lot going on. But it actually does work. Because for a while, the Master actually wins. And in a genius move by Chris Chibnall, one of the only genius moves he made, the Master directly kills the Doctor. Because the Master had been involved with a few of the causes of regenerations, but never had outright killed the Doctor. So that actually happening is a huge thing. Actually, technically twice that happened. And of course, this features the internet's favorite moment of last year. The weird victory dance the Master does is so stinking weird. And has anyone figured out why he disguises himself as Rasputin? Or my personal theory is that he just wanted a victory song that made sense, and so he's like, I'm going to do this. Speaking of which, yeah, the best performance goes to Sacha Dhawan as the Master. Maybe the best iteration of the character, apart from Delgado. But yeah, as someone who wasn't even a big fan of David Tennant, I will admit, I did get excited when I realized that's who Whittaker was regenerating into. So, yeah, overall, it's pretty good, but I do prefer the top 5. Again, the Doctor is sidelined for part of it, and it's got a lot of stuff going on. Maybe if the Cybermen or the Daleks were removed, and it was just the Cybermen and the Master, or the Daleks and the Master, then you know what? I think that would have been okay. But all 3 of them, numerous cameos, and having to write out the outgoing Doctor. Yeah, that's just a lot that one story has to do. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. Number 5, The Day of the Doctor. So this one is interesting because it's the only on-screen appearance of John Hurt as the War Doctor. And I don't know what to think. I was kind of tempted to put this one was actually swapped with the number 4 placement until literally 5 minutes before I recorded this video, because I just decided in the end that you don't get that much time with the War Doctor compared to the Doctor of the next story. Still really good, and I think that Tennant, Smith, and Hurt make for one of the most interesting Doctor trios. And of course, it does feature the portal scene from Endgame before the portal scene from Endgame with all of the Doctors showing up. So, yeah, overall, pretty good story. Good celebration of 50 years. But ultimately, I don't think it gets higher than number 5. Number 4 is Planet of the Spiders for the 3rd Doctor. Now, I think this is going to be one of the more interesting ones to talk about, because I think this one's pretty underrated. Because you could make this argument for a few of these, but in this story, literally everything that happens is the Doctor's fault. Because if he had not taken the crystal at the end of the Green Death, the events of the story wouldn't be going down. I mean, seriously. nothing in this story would be going down if he didn't take that crystal. But apart from that, it's actually a really good performance that Pertwee gives, and I really like his regeneration scene. Honestly, maybe the best in the show's history. Is it an episode too long? Maybe, but... Or maybe an episode extra could have been spent on developing the tidal planet of the spiders more. But either way, it's actually a really good and underrated culmination to 3's era, and I think in general, the pretty underrated nowadays era. So, also, best chase sequence in the show's history, with episode 2 essentially being an entire chase sequence. So yeah, but it's not enough to get in the top 3. So speaking of which story starts off the top 3? So starting off the top 3 is Bad Wolf and the Parting of the Ways, which is the regeneration of Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor. This regeneration had to introduce modern audiences to the concept while also ending this season perfectly. And you know what? It provides for one of the most intense regeneration stories ever. The Daleks are at potentially their most deadly in the show's history. The stakes don't really get higher than this for a Dalek story. And this is also one of 2 appearances of the Dalek Emperor. The other one being an evil of the Daleks. So this is actually the only existing appearance of the Dalek Emperor. And, okay, I said Dalton's Rassilon was the best one-episode villain. This take on the Dalek Emperor could actually be the best one, because that is just such an evil and honestly crazy. The Daleks are crazy in general, but this one genuinely believes that he is the creator of all Daleks. It's cuckoo. And so ultimately, it's just kind of an interesting thing, and Eccleston honestly does a really good job fighting against a voice, essentially, because the Daleks themselves, I think, were puppets. So, you don't think about that, but ultimately, I think that this is the best the Daleks have ever been, at least in terms of their threat level, apart from Evil of the Daleks. So yeah, very great story, and the best regeneration of the new era, and maybe the best story of Nine's era. I mean, who knows, maybe the best of the revival. The only thing that prevents it from being in the top 2 is everything I've said was about the Parting of the Ways. The first part, Bad Wolf, until you get that Dalek reveal, is not great. So, yeah, that's what's preventing this from being in the top 2, is that first half, really. Because the second half, probably the best singular regeneration episode. But this is about the stories, not the individual episodes. So, yep, let's move on to the runner-up. It shouldn't be a shocker to anyone that the Caves of Androzani made it so high on my list. I mean, often referred to as the greatest Doctor Who story of all time, the Caves of Androzani is incredible. Featuring perhaps the greatest performance any outgoing Doctor has given. The only ones that rival it are the outgoing Doctor of my number 1, and Eccleston in The Parting of the Ways. The stakes, even though they're small scale, they feel incredible because it's the Doctor and new companion, literally introduced the story before new companion Perry, are literally trapped in a drug war. And so now they have to get back to the TARDIS after being poisoned. They don't have to try to stop it. They don't have to, try to prevent one side from winning and help the other side. No, it's literally get back to the TARDIS. And I think it's also interesting to note, this is maybe the biggest bloodbath in the show's history when it comes to character deaths. Because, I mean, obviously the Doctor doesn't make it out of this alive. I think only 2 characters actually survive this entire story. Perry and some other one. So, yeah. But this is the kind of, intensity that I wanted Logopolis to have. Also, definitely one of the show's most iconic cliffhangers in episode 3. Just, yeah, I mean, what else can I say about this one that hasn't been said already? So, yeah, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what my number 1 is, because, I mean, it's the only one left I haven't talked about. The War Games is my number 1 pick. Where do I begin with this? Okay, I should probably mention, this is actually the single longest thing I've ever watched. At about 4 hours and some change. And it doesn't feel like that at all. It feels like half the length. The whole idea of this planet being taken and all of these different sections that the heroes have to go through in order to determine, how to stop the evil plan. And ultimately, stakes getting so high that the Doctor has to ultimately wind up calling in his own people, something that he had never done before because he had not believed the stakes to be that high where he needed their help, is incredible. I think a really underrated moment lies in this story, which is the Second Doctor's trial. It's a perfect summary of the character in general. Not just this incarnation. Okay, I've brought up great one-time villains numerous times before, but the War Chief and the Warlord are 2 incredible one-time villains. Also, I think that this is the best episode Zoe gets, apart from the invasion, I'd say. This is her best story. This is also a really good episode for Fraser Hines. But obviously, Patrick Troughton is the best actor when it comes to this story. He's able to, easily be like, oh no, this ain't good. And he also kind of genuinely believed that he might have betrayed his friends in that cliffhanger, only to be like, nope, I've just got a really good plan. And, he gets maybe the darkest regeneration when you actually think about it, because his regeneration is forced regeneration, which essentially means he's executed at the end of the story. That's kind of dark. And generally, the story actually goes to a lot of dark places with these troops fighting from different points in history. And also the Doctor's companions getting their minds completely wiped of all of the adventures, minus their first one. So, I mean, yeah, this story is really good, but it's also really dark. And honestly, it's also just one of my favorites. I mean, if it's not my number 1, it's my number 2. So, I mean, there you go. You found out a couple of the ones for my best episode list are on this list. But yeah, that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one. Like and subscribe. Bye.